The Third Rail, confronting our pension failures.
The third rail is a discussion about the pension crises in the world. We chronicle 3 jurisdictions, Rhode Island, New Brunswick, and the Netherlands, and then we draw conclusions from what happened in those jurisdictions as to what could be applied to the Canadian system to make sure that it's sustainable for the future. Well, there are many things going on in the pension system that make it very difficult for plans. I mean, first of all, Canadians are just not saving enough money for their retirement. That's the first issue. The second thing is our demographic change, where we have people living so much longer than 10, 20 years ago, and so you have to save that much more because your retirement is going to be that much longer. And then finally, we've got a low return environment for investments, which means the money you're saving today isn't going to earn as much money as it used to be able to finance your future. Now, we chose New Brunswick, Rhode Island, and the Netherlands for different reasons. New Brunswick, it's Canadian. It's a have-not province, negative growth province, and they basically were losing their credit rating because of the pension crisis. Their pension plans were terribly underfunded. They hadn't gone over the cliff, but they were looking into the abyss. And so we chronicle some very brave leaders in labor and in government who turned that system around. Rhode Island, on the other hand, actually had gone over the cliff. I mean, they were in the abyss. They had cities who had declared bankruptcy, and there's an individual appeared on the scene, Gino Raimondo, the treasurer, who basically ran on a pension reform platform, was elected with a landslide, and has been able to turn that system around. Even more drastic action than what New Brunswick took. And then we went to the Netherlands because, you know, the Dutch talk about pensions like we talk about hockey. It is a national pastime. Every taxi driver, everybody will talk about it. And they are credited in the world as having the most sustainable, the best pension system around. And so we wanted to see the lessons that could be drawn from their system. Well, the biggest problem facing us right now is it's an uninformed debate. And this book was meant to help change the debate. So far, the debate has been more about pension envy. You know, you have a pension, I don't, let's tear yours down and then we'll all be happy. Has been kind of the way people have approached it. And what we sensed was that there are lots of educated Canadians out there who are frustrated, confused, a little intimidated by the discussion and don't really know how to enter into this debate. They know a debate is coming. I mean, there are going to be elections within, starting within the next few months and for the next probably decade fought over the pension issue. People want to engage in it, but they don't know how to. So far, the debate has been for economists and accountants and actuaries, and it's all a little confusing. So our reason for writing the book was to give those people an entry point. Well, it's an issue that leaders, political leaders, business leaders, union leaders, have all been afraid to touch. Most of those people live in a short-term world, and the pension is really a long-term issue. And it's been much easier just to ignore it and kick it down the can, let somebody else deal with it, and avoid touching the rail because it could kill you. Well, I think within the next 5 to 10 years, we've got to get the Canadian pension system solidly on its feet. Now, the good news is people are engaged in the debate, and I'm certain that there will be elections fought over this issue within the next number of months and years. We have three recommendations that we came to at the end, lessons that we drew from those other three jurisdictions. The first is an augmentation to Canada Pension Plan. Now that's had lots of publicity in the last little while and appears on one hand to be shut down. My personal view is that it isn't dead. It won't go away because it needs to be addressed. Because by augmenting CPP is by far the most effective way to help out those people who are earning kind of $30,000 to $100,000 a year in income who have not provided for themselves. Our second recommendation has to do with workplace pension plans, and particularly defined benefit plans. We are big supporters, and we go through in the book, we lay out why the defined benefit model is far superior to a defined contribution model, far cheaper and better for everybody. So we debunk those myths that defined benefit is bad and defined contribution is good. By the same token, we make the point that the old stereotypical 1950s defined benefit plan needs to be modified. It needs to be evolved. There needs to be lots of changes made so that more risk is shared between the sponsor and the employee. Then our last recommendation has to do with the 60% of Canadians who have no workplace pension plan. They're self-employed or they're with a company that has no plan. And there we come up with a construct that we think will work. Because that's 7 million people that are going to go from being contributors to plans to being people who are drawing on these plans. And there are a number of issues with that. One is most of them are not necessarily that well prepared. And that means that those of us who are left behind still working are going to have to carry that load. I think it's everybody's responsibility. I mean, I'm, as a capitalist, believe that it's up to you as an individual. You must be held accountable for the decisions you make yourself. By the same token, we as a society, in a Canadian society, we're used to having a social net to help people. And I don't think that we as a society are going to stand by and watch ourselves go into geriatric poverty. I just don't think we'll do that. So we will throw money at it. And the most expensive way of doing that is by old age security and guaranteed income supplements. The least expensive way of doing that is through things such as Canada Pension Plan, workplace pension plans, etc. But the individual has a responsibility, and so far they have not really stood up and lived up to that responsibility. We see the failure of the registered retirement savings plans. People will not, well, they have not demonstrated that they have the self-discipline to save on their own. So what's common to all of our recommendations is that saving for the future is mandatory.
The Third Rail, Confronting Our Pension Failures. Written by Jim Leech and Jackie McNish. Published by Signal.